Hi everyone, welcome to the official YouTube channel of Law Prep Tutorial and I am Saket, your English mentor. आज के वीडियो में हम बात करने वाले हैं एक ऐसे प्रॉब्लम की which most of the aspirants face when it comes to CLAT reading comprehension section. And the very first trap that they fall for is reading the passage and not just the options. Now, what you see behind me might sound like a generic piece of advice, but why I have included this as a trap, and in fact, I should rather say that this is one of the foundational traps, something that sets the path for the bigger traps. The first trap here is that students, most of the times, what they do is कि instead of reading the passage in depth or understanding the nuances in the passage or the shifts in the passage, author के tonal shifts होते हैं, author के arguments में shift होते हैं, instead of understanding that, what they do is कि they just go to the options, they just go read the questions, read the options, and after that they try to reverse engineer, that is they reverse check it with the passage. Achha, in doing so, what they fall for is, the trap that they are falling for is that they think they are saving time. But instead of that, what happens is that you are missing on these smaller changes in the argument, small shift in tone, or the smaller nuances or the nitty-gritty of the passage. That is one of the most important and the most basic trap also that you fall for. How to avoid it? Avoiding it, इसके लिए सबसे ज़्यादा important है कि rather than restricting yourself just to the options and then cross-checking it with the passage, go for an in-depth reading of the passage, go for an in-depth understanding of the shift in the passage, the author's argument, and the organization and the structure of the passage, how this passage evolves and how the author's narrative is being evolved or the author's point of view is being evolved in the passage. Second trap, and this is one of the most ignored aspect. Most ignored why? Because at times we do fall for such harsh words, or we do fall for such words which are too absolute. When it comes to CLAT, when it comes to most of the questions that you see in your CLAT and in fact your mocks also, most of the times what happens is the author is not extremely absolute in nature. That is, the author does not go for extreme kind of views or extreme kind of opinions. Yeah, but yes, you can have exceptions. You can have exceptions जहाँ पे yes, the claim of the author may also be absolute, may also be something which is extreme in nature. If that is the case, then you can definitely understand that these red flag could become green flags also there. But in an ideal case, in an ideal scenario, and what we observe usually and in general cases is that the author's claims are not absolutely extreme, or they are not absolute in nature. They are balanced. Most of the times they are balanced. So the trap here is to not go for red flag words or those words which are extreme in nature. Rather go for words which are safe, which are balanced, which offers a balanced perspective, which do not go or incline towards any one particular side or any one particular extremity. The next trap is separating passage truth from world knowledge. अब ये क्यों ज़रूरी है? देखो, आप ऐसा हो सकता है ना कि if you read a passage and possibly you have immense knowledge about that. Assume that you are a scholar on that subject. ठीक है, आप हो गए scholar. But when it comes to CLAT, when it comes to reading comprehension, the key is to not go beyond what is mentioned in the passage. If you are going beyond what is mentioned in the passage, what you're going to do is that you are using extrapolation, you're using your scholarly knowledge, or you are using your world knowledge about it. Understand, CLAT is not here to test how much you know about a particular topic. Let's say sociology, let's say sociological thinkers, if you have a passage on that. Possibly you must be the topper in your batch in sociology as a subject. But CLAT has no interest in that. The consortium has no interest in that. The consortium only wants that you read the passage, understand the content, and then go for the question, mark the right option, and move on. So idea here is to never mix your world knowledge. Even if you have immense knowledge on the subject, immense knowledge on the topic, don't mix it with the passage. Ignore anything that is external, ignore any external assumption, ignore any external knowledge that you have. Do not, no matter how tempting it is, do not include or do not imbibe it with your passage. The next one, the next trap is close paraphrasing and distortion. अब देखो, क्लोज पैराफ्रेजिंग और डिस्टॉर्शन सबसे ज़्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट एंड सबसे ज़्यादा इग्नोर्ड ट्रैप है. क्यों? क्योंकि पैराफ्रेजिंग और डिस्टॉर्शंस में एक्चुअली डिफरेंस क्या होता है? जब ऑथर किसी पैसेज के किसी लाइन को, पैसेज के किसी पॉइंट को पैराफ्रेज कर रहा होता है, सो यू विल नोटिस कि मोस्ट ऑफ द टाइम जो वर्डिंग है दैट इज़ ऑलमोस्ट सिमिलर. The words are similar, vocabulary is obviously similar, the grammatical structure or the framing could also be extremely identical in nature. अब आइडेंटिकल तो होता है, बट इवन विद दैट आइडेंटिकल एलिमेंट्स बीइंग प्रेजेंट, ऑथर कोई ना कोई छोटा सा नुआंस, कोई ना कोई छोटा सा सटल सा शिफ्ट, समथिंग दैट्स टू सटल और टू स्मॉल इवन टू नोटिस, बट देन अंडरस्टैंड कि जो छोटे नुआंसेस या छोटे डिफरेंसेस हैं, दीज डिफरेंसेस कैन क्रिएट a huge change in the meaning of the options or create a huge change in the meaning of any given particular sentence. So the trap is to not fall for distortions. Distortion में author पूरा का पूरा sentence, पूरा का पूरा idea वैसा का वैसा ही rephrase कर देगा, but will include a small line or a small word that will change the meaning altogether. The idea is not to fall for such traps. That is अंडरस्टैंडिंग कि कोई ऐसा वर्ड, कोई ऐसा पॉइंट जो किसी चीज़ में सटल ट्विस्ट या सटल चेंजेस ले आ रहा हो, मे बी स्ट्रेंथन कर रहा हो किसी चीज़ को, वीकन कर दे रहा हो ऑथर के पॉइंट को, या कॉज इफेक्ट को इफेक्ट कॉज जैसा कर दे रहा हो, समथिंग लाइक दिस. आइडिया इज टू इंश्योर कि जो पॉइंट ऑथर ने पैसेज से पिक किया है ना, दैट शुड बी देयर एंड दैट शुड मैच विद द टेक्स्ट. इवन दैट स्मॉल नुआंस और जो निटिग्रिटीज में चेंजेस की हम बात कर रहे हैं, that you should have a keen eye for such things. You should have a keen eye for such details. Be meticulous when it comes to that. The next is be alert to opposite answers and vocabulary. Now understand the consortium has got an immense love for twisting the words, twisting vocabs, and at times you also fall because maybe we are not well versed with the meaning of the word. So the idea is never fall for such traps जहाँ पे vocab की वजह से answer या option twist हो जाए and it does not match or does not align with the author's perspective. And in fact opposite answers also, answers ऐसे जो देखने में तो बहुत appealing लग रहे हो या बहुत ही ज़्यादा convincing लग रहे हो, but at the same time they use words or they use points which do not align with the text. Understanding this is सिंपल, बिकॉज अगर कॉन्टेक्चुअल वोकेबलरी के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से समझोगे या आप पोलैरिटी फ्लिप ट्रैप या ऑथर के मीनिंग के रिवर्सल के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से समझोगे, तो ऑथर किसी कॉज एंड इफेक्ट को या सपोर्ट वर्सेस क्रिटिसिज्म, ही विल यूज दैट काइंड ऑफ पोलैरिटी ट्रैप. समथिंग विच इज बीइंग सपोर्टेड माइट बी प्रेजेंटेड इन द पैसेज और इन द ऑप्शंस एज बीइंग क्रिटिसाइज्ड, समथिंग ऑफ दैट सॉर्ट. या अगर आप वोकैब की बात करोगे, अगर वोकेबलरी की वजह से यू आर गेटिंग कंफ्यूज, द बेस्ट वे टू चेक इट आउट इज यू ट्राई टू रिप्लेस द वर्ड. If the logic or if the broader idea gets changed, understand that it was a trap. If not, then go for the right one. The next trap that we have here is half true options. ये ऐसे options होते हैं जो शुरू तो बिल्कुल perfect होते हैं, मतलब if you see the first half or in fact the second half, you will understand or you will think of कि yes, this is the best bet, this is the best option that I should go for. But then they introduce a minor change, they introduce a minor point which changes the entire context. Again, the idea is not to go for options which are half true. They can have a wrong ending, they can have an ending which is not supported by the passage, they can have a claim which the author never supported in the passage. Don't fall for it. Now see, what you see behind me is one of the passages from the recent mocks. And अब हमने इतने सारे ways out की बात कर ली that you should keep a check on all these foundational habits when it comes to balancing your options or balancing the trap options. Achha, why have I included this? Because you can have a direct application or a direct check of what traps are. The passage that you see behind me is from one of the recent mocks, mock 52. In this particular passage, the idea was that there were two friends, Janetta and Margaret. Janetta came from a family where there was nothing of particular importance, and she's mentioned as someone who's poor little Janetta. So socially we can understand that maybe not from a very elite or rich family. Then the other girl, Margaret Adair. Margaret Adair is mentioned as someone who is from a family of distinguished people, and these two people, they are friends. And the third character that we have here is Miss Polehampton, who is the principal of the school. And because of them being friends, there are a lot of people who are offended also. They take offense of the friendship between someone who is from a distinguished, rich or elite family and from someone who is extremely poor. Miss Polehampton, the principal of the school, she also disapproves of their friendship. She says कि it is an unsuitable friendship. उनके according to ये friendship नहीं हो सकती. It's an unsuitable friendship because of the differences also, the social differences or the vast societal differences that we have. And what Miss Polehampton thinks of कि ये उनकी एक moral responsibility है that she should go and talk to Lady Caroline, who is Margaret's mother. She should go and talk to her. And even after that, if you read the last paragraph also, लास्ट पैराग्राफ का पॉइंट ये है कि मिस पोलहैम्पटन को ऐसा लगता है कि ये उनकी रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है दैट शी शुड गो एंड टॉक एंड शी शुड स्पीक वेरी सीरियसली टू अ डियर मार्गरेट. क्यों? बिकॉज शी इज फ्रेंड्स विथ जेनेटा एंड शी शुड नॉट बी. दिस इज द बेसिक क्रक्स ऑफ द पैसेज. आफ्टर दैट मिस पोलहैम्पटन को जब भी कोई ऐसी बात करनी होती थी विच कुड हैव बीन अ पॉइंट ऑफ डिसअग्रीमेंट, तो हमेशा शी यूज टू यूज द टर्म हर डियर मार्गरेट. अब वी हैड अ क्वेश्चन ऑन दिस. अच्छा, आपने अगर इतना यहाँ पे समझ लिया तो यू मस्ट बी वेरी मच क्लियर दैट मिस पोलहैम्पटन never approves of the friendship. She has a disapproving idea or a disapproving nature for the friendship between Margaret and Janetta. And if I look at this part, यहाँ पे Miss Polehampton has a very inflated or has a very high view of Margaret. She thinks of her as the show pupil of the establishment, something or some student who is the core or the central figure of the establishment or the school. And she also thinks that she has a perfect breeding, and because of that perfect breeding, school को एक distinguished presence मिलती है, एक distinction मिलता है. And in fact, she has a lot of other talents, and her behavior is also exemplary. That is at least what Miss Polehampton, the principal, thinks of. So she has a very high approach, or she looks up on Margaret as someone who is from a distinguished family, who is someone who should not be friends with Janetta, and is someone who is there, who has an exemplary behavior, is talented, and is the show pupil of the establishment, the most famous or the most important face of the school. You had a question on this. The question was, what is the author's tone while discussing Miss Polehampton's treatment of Margaret and Janetta? Understand why I included this, I'll tell you. Of what I noticed, most of the students went for option B, which is stern and disapproving. Stern is someone who is extremely strict, and disapproving, of course, means that you don't approve or you are very much critical, extremely critical of something. And option A was amused and subtly critical. The trap that the students fell for was that it was the author's tone while discussing Miss Polehampton's treatment, and what these students misinterpreted was that they have to understand or they have to answer it with respect to Miss Polehampton's treatment of Margaret and Janetta. Now understand, there is a difference in that also. Miss Polehampton ka treatment when it comes to Margaret and Janetta, and author ka treatment when it comes to discussing about them. There is a difference, there is a small nuance. Let's look at that. See, I have picked those lines जहाँ से आप ये clear हो जाओगे कि what is the subtle difference or what is the nuance between option A and option B, and why should option A be the right answer and not option B. Now, if you look at author's tone towards Miss Polehampton's treatment of Margaret, so third paragraph में author started talking about Miss Polehampton, and he said, she always talked of her dear Margaret, Janetta used to say, when she was going to make herself particularly disagreeable, which means that any point of disagreement that she was about to come up with, वो हमेशा start होता था with her dear Margaret, something that she was probably not in agreement with Margaret. Then her air of perfect breeding gave distinction, Miss Polehampton thought, to the whole school, the theme of many a lecture to less accomplished and less decorous pupils, which means that she thought very high of Margaret and very low of the other less decorous pupils or the less decorous students. Contrary to all conventional expectations, Margaret Adair was not stupid. If you look at these 3-4 points here, यहाँ पे author थोड़ा सा witty, थोड़ा सा satirical, थोड़ा सा critical और sarcastic भी है when it comes to Miss Polehampton's treatment. That is, Miss Polehampton was a bit biased. She had an inclination towards Margaret's family, and Margaret's coming from a distinguished family. So यहाँ पे हमें जो चीज़ समझ में आनी चाहिए थी वो ये थी कि when it comes to author discussing Miss Polehampton, then the author is trying to be humorous, critical, a bit satirical also, and witty also. On the contrary, if you look at Miss Polehampton's strict and disapproving tone, she was very much strict. She thought that it's her responsibility to talk to her mother. She thought that it's an unusual friendship, and this should not be so. If you understand the nuance between the 2 points, you will easily understand that why option A should be the right answer and not option B. This was the trap that most of the students fell for. So I thought it is important that we come up with it and we discuss it in detail. Acha. Now, when it comes to solving a question, the best point is, the best idea is कि अगर आपके पास 4 options हैं, if you're not able to eliminate either of them, in that case think of not attempting it, keeping it aside for later on. अगर आप 4 में से एक options भी eliminate कर रहे हो, So you understand that you can take a safe bet now. अगर 4 में से एक ऑप्शन एलिमिनेट हो गया, ठीक है, सेफ बेट ले सकते हैं. नाउ वी हैव 3 ऑप्शंस एंड वी जस्ट नीड सम लॉजिक और सम रैशनल टू एलिमिनेट द रेस्ट ऑफ द 2. अगर 2 एलिमिनेट कर लिए देन इट इज़ ऑल द मोर ईजी. और अगर 2 एलिमिनेट करने के बाद भी ना समझ में आए दैट व्हाट इज़ द राइट आंसर, व्हाट शुड बी द राइट आंसर, सो ऑलवेज गो फॉर द मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट हैक एंड ऑलवेज आस्क द क्रिटिकल क्वेश्चन टू योर सेल्फ कि जो मैं मार्क करने जा रहा हूँ, जो ऑप्शन में मार्क करने जा रहा हूँ, इज द पैसेज सपोर्टिंग दैट? Is there any particular proof about it in the passage? Can I prove it from the passage? If you can, then definitely go for it. If you apply the test, if you can prove it from the passage, go for it. That is the most important hack when you are torn between 2 passages, 2 options. And the last hack. The last hack is nothing new, but a sum total or a recap of what we discussed. That is to verify with the text. Never go just for options. Try to read the passage and then cross-check and then cross-verify. But yes, after reading the passage in depth, in detail. Second is to avoid any kind of extreme language. Anything that is extreme, that is too absolute, should be avoided unless the author also is of the same opinion. नेक्स्ट इज पैसेज ट्रूथ वर्सेस वर्ल्ड नॉलेज. कोई भी एक्सटर्नल इन्फॉर्मेशन, नो मैटर आप कितने भी बड़े स्कॉलर हो उस सब्जेक्ट के, डोंट यूज योर एक्सटर्नल नॉलेज irrespective of your knowledge base on that particular topic. Next is paraphrase or distortion. Author का same idea को different words में represent कर देना is one thing, versus author के छोटे words या छोटे छोटे nuances की वजह से पूरे element को, पूरे information को distort कर देना is a trap. Avoid it. The last one is half or true or vocabulary trap, which means options शुरू तो होते हैं with something that is definitely true from the passage, but they end with something that makes it wrong. Try to avoid all these traps just in case you want to crack CLAT and be on the top. Thank you, and just in case you want any other video from our side, do let us know in the comment section below.